What's up, everybody? So, this right here is my buddy Sam Driscoll. If you've ever listened to the Caniac Report, he is one of the two Sams on that show. And I was recently on his show with him, and I wanted to have him on here with myself over here on the Warning Take. We are going to have a couple of little, casual discussion here and everything as the playoffs get closer, talking about what we think the actual lineup of the team will look like, who the starting goalie should be, if there should be any changes made throughout the lineup, and what black aces we could maybe potentially see get a little action in the postseason should they be needed. So, Sam, please go ahead and introduce yourself and welcome to the channel.
Yeah, well, I'm Sam Driscoll. I'm part of the Caniac Report. My co-host Sam Wallace also does the show with me. So if you're ever interested in taking a look, feel free to do so. I'm sure we share a lot of the same uh, uh, listeners.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so I love hockey. Been watching for years. I actually became a big fan in 2009, the year they played Pittsburgh got swept. Could be ironic, right? We might play Pittsburgh again, so it'd be what 15 years almost, I
Mm-hmm.
think 15
Just
years
think,
since we played.
you know what I was about to do when that happened in 2009?
Hmm.
That was the year I joined the Navy. I left home that year.
Oh my goodness.
That was the last hockey game I saw was the Hurricanes get swept by the Penguins.
Wow.
And then I didn't
That's
really get to sit down and watch one for about a year because I was busy all the time for the first year I was in.
well, you didn't miss a whole lot even. That's 10 years you didn't miss a whole
No,
lot,
see,
really.
that's why I tell people I blame the Navy for the Canes playoff drought because it lasted the entire time I was in. The moment I got out, it was over. They had
That's
one more. They missed the playoffs one more time in 2018, but the 18-19 season was when it finally ended.
and speaking of that, just if you don't mind, I'm going to plug our next episode real quick. We
You go right
actually have a
ahead, dude.
guest. We got a guest coming on. Who it's not really. We talked about hockey. His dad, I used to be an assistant coach with the Caps,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a buddy of mine. He's coming on, and we are going to talk a little bit about you're a veteran, Chris a veteran,
Mm-hmm.
movie he came out with that's dealing with PTSD. So
Mm-hmm.
take a listen to that and see what you think.
Was that the one you came up here and did stuff with that you were
Yeah,
talking about?
yep, yep.
Oh,
Mhm.
okay. I'd like to see that actually if you have it like somewhere where I can watch it or anything.
Absolutely. Let me in fact I'll talk with my friend because a lot of times for veterans and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
he'll send them something special for
Does
them
he
to
live up
talk
here?
to. Yeah, he lives in Cary. Yep.
Oh, okay.
He lives in Cary
Oh, he
or
lives in Cary.
Raleigh.
Okay.
Raleigh, sorry. He lives in Raleigh, but yeah, he's
Mm-hmm.
not far from here. But yeah, I'll have him shoot you an email for sure about that. But yeah,
Okay.
take a listen. He talks about the movie, talks about everything like that,
Mm-hmm.
and definitely worth a listen to. Your veteran reminded me of that. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for your service.
You're quite welcome. Um, so here's what I was thinking. I was thinking we could talk about the lineup, how it's going to look in the playoffs, some potential first round matchups, um, the overall stuff going on with the team and everything like that. And as we talked about before we started recording, the prospect of Jacob Slavin's extension and what it's going to look like. Um, so here's the first thing: starter, Freddie or Kochekov?
Is it a question?
Yes, just what do you think?
Frederick Andrews. I don't know how it can't be Freddie. I thought
Mm-hmm.
he's played so good. And
Mm-hmm.
I honestly thought this would be a tougher question.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really think there was anything Anderson could do because, to be honest, I don't think I've ever seen him play this good.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is the best he's played. And it might be because he's got a chip on his shoulder. Everyone probably told him, "You're never going to play again. You're never going to play again."
Mm-hmm.
I talked to some doctors that I knew who are familiar with that kind of a situation. They were like, "Yeah, he's probably never going to play again."
Mm-hmm.
And it's got to be Freddie, right? I mean,
Yes.
I mean, it has to be.
I figured that, like, I meant to ask that in more of a rhetorical manner. I think pretty much everybody unanimously agrees across the board that Freddie is going to be the guy that starts. And if something goes wrong with him, you've got Kochekov, and then you've got Spencer Martin after that, if you absolutely need to go that route. So,
Yeah, and you got Ronta if you have to go with that too. So I mean, you've got four goalies.
yeah. And, it's like if Ronta had to play one game, I think would be okay. It's if he started putting a bunch of mileage on him like you saw a couple of years ago when we were playing the Rangers in the playoffs and it was, him and Kochekov that was in the net most of the time. But yeah, so that there, I think they're good. The defense, I think, is set. I don't think you change anything with the defense. Where I think that they've got some decisions to make is how they're going to align the forwards. I think, and you guys were talking about this on either your most recent episode or one before that, MSF line. Bring that back, I would say,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
keep Gensel, Aho, and Jarvis, the Jag line, as I've heard it called lately. Keep that line together, and then you structure the rest. So you've got your definitive first line there with Jarvis, Aho, and Gensel, and then leave
Yep.
that alone. Let it keep building chemistry, and then after that, you put Martin Stahl, and Foss together, and then all you have to do is figure out how exactly you want to employ the middle six. And Svechnikov looked a lot better last night, so that gives you a really good option there. KK is probably going to keep me in the scratch. One of the
Yep.
biggest reasons I personally believe that is like KK can really only play one position, that's center. I don't see him being able to adapt to playing wing. Drury can
Yep.
do that.
They
Faust
tried before, it didn't work.
Faust was drafted as a center, but he's an excellent winger who can play both sides. So that's one of the reasons KK is the odd man out, in my opinion. Um, so how would you structure the forward lines, do you think?
Well, yeah, like you said, so you got Jarvis, Otto, Gensel, Stahl, Martin, Foss, because I want to go back to that, especially I think when you're playing at home
Mm-hmm.
and can throw them out against, for example, if it's Pittsburgh,
Mm-hmm.
the Crosby line, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to want that against the Crosby line at home
Mm-hmm.
as often as you can do it. Um, and this is where it really gets tough. I'm going to start with the third scoring line. I would like it to be Drury, Svechnikov,
Nason, maybe?
and this is where it gets tough
Mm-hmm.
because it's you're gonna have Jury and you're gonna have Nason probably, and then you have Kuznetsov and you're gonna have Natchez.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter about who you're gonna wing with them. And I think I'm gonna put Teravainen with Kuznetsov and Natchez because I don't think Svech can do that. And
Mm-hmm.
then I'm gonna put Jury, Svech, and Nason. And I think you have to kind of go to Svechnikov and tell him, hey, like this isn't a demotion. You should take it like take advantage
Mm-hmm.
of other teams' third and fourth lines, and you're still on the power play.
Yes.
So you're not really going to see a crazy dip in ice time, and you're going to abuse. You should abuse
Mm-hmm.
any team that we place fourth line. I don't believe there is any team in the Eastern Conference who has the depth that Carolina does. I don't think New York does. I don't think Boston does. I don't think Tampa does. I don't think anybody does. Maybe Florida, but even then, I think they're a little tough on that fourth line, or a little bit icky on that fourth line.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can't think of another team who has a fourth line who could potentially have someone like Svechnikov.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that benefits you to kind of split that up. And I mean, you could put, if you really wanted to give a defensive presence on the second line,
Mm-hmm.
you could flip flop Tavo and Nason and throw Nason on that line with Natchez and Kuznetsov. I actually would like that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put Tavo, Svechnikov, and Drury. That line too would be devastating.
Mm-hmm.
There are just so many ways you can really do your second and third scoring line.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could definitely see like either one of those lineups happening and everything. The good news is most of what we know is going to happen is that the defense, we know who the starter's going to be. I think we know who the first and fourth line are. After the way Svechnikov played last night, I think it's time to like rebuild the middle six with him in it and put the Martin Stahl Foss line back together. Because like you said, that line, it goes out there, it eats up minutes. It, forechecks a lot, keeps play at the other end of the ice, prevents a lot of transition. Jordan Stahl is going to have to be like, okay, so for theory's sake, we'll stick with Pittsburgh. Jordo's going to have to be matched up against, especially on the road as much as you can do it, because at home ice you've got last change, so you can keep Jordo and Crosby matched up with each other pretty easily, or I won't say easily, but it's significantly easier. What are you growling at? The damn Chihuahua's over there growling. Yeah, you're a big tough guy. But yeah, that's my girlfriend's dog, but I kind of claim him too.
Okay, mine's sitting next to me chewing a bone.
Yeah, my other one's over there laying off in the corner. But basically it's like, so at home you have last change. Jordo can go out there and be matched up with Crosby, and that opens up more time that the Aho line or the Kuznetsov line, etc., are playing against Pittsburgh's second, third, and fourth, and that's gonna help us out a whole lot. So I like your idea with everything, especially like Tavo said something last night to Ryan Hinkle about, I thought that they would never put, or he said that he thought Rod would never put him and Kuznetsov
Yeah.
together because they were just going to pass it to each other. And I can see that too. Like in my head, I visualize them just basically playing a game of Pong on the ice with each other. But it's working so far, them being together.
I have to say, I've got my Kuznetsov jersey over there now, so
Yeah, I just got my Slavin one. I got a 25th anniversary one. That's how
I
confident I
wanted to
am that
get
he's
one
going to
with.
stay.
I'm I risked it getting the Kuznetsov jersey.
Hmm.
I think he wa- I think he's gonna want to stay.
I do too. Because he seems night and day different from when he was up here
Yeah,
before
but
he
I
got
mean,
traded.
hey, but I guess some people think Kuznetsov and KK are exactly the same. But whatever, it's fine.
Oh, dude, I didn't go off on her over that, but I thought about it. Um,
I'm like, what game are you watching? I mean,
no,
like seriously, what
this is
game
a
are you
take no
watching?
this is a take no prisoners mentality. Okay, you got him for 50% off. All you had to do was give up a third round pick, which based on the stuff Elliot Friedman said today on 32 Thoughts, Nate just might not be here come summertime anyway. And the thing about it is, okay, trade him. You probably get maybe a couple of players for now and maybe a couple of picks or whatever, maybe some prospects. And even if he gets offer sheeted, they have to compensate you anyway. So either way, there will be some sort of a return for Nate just since he's an RFA. And like you were saying, qualify him, put that on the back burner, get your UFAs done. And
Yeah.
primarily, Jacob
I,
Slavin is one of those guys that are going to get done early once they know how much money they can pay him when his extension starts next year.
yeah, and if someone wants to go ahead and throw a big fat contract this way,
Mm-hmm.
by all means, I'll take 4 or 5 first round draft picks,
Yeah, go
whatever
ahead.
it's gonna be, because that's what it's gonna take
Yeah,
to pry him away. It's gonna take somewhere north of 8.
yeah. And
And
we'd get a lot for that. That wouldn't be the
and
worst case scenario at all.
no, I mean, and look, you qualify him. I don't know what his qualifier is. It's probably decent,
Mm-hmm.
but whoever signs him is going to sign him north of 7 or 8.
Yeah.
And we can either say no and get it's probably going to be 2 or 3 firsts,
Mm-hmm.
and you can flip those firsts for players with term.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, I don't think you're going to lose with Natchez. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, he's an RFA. He's still going to hold value. Because you could sign him to another 1 year deal if you wanted to and give him a boatload. If you
Mm-hmm.
wanted to give him a 1 by 9, you can do 1 by 9 and figure it out later as well.
See, I'm not opposed to that. Like just doing bridge deals real quick. Like that's one thing that like if that's essentially what we did with getting Orlov in free agency. It was
Yeah.
basically like you're discounting Nikishin until real Nikishin gets here. And I don't mean that as an insult because Orlov's been great for us,
Yeah.
especially once he figured it out after about the first 20-25 games. But defenseman, it's hard to adapt to a new system, especially considering Carolina's is completely different than anything he ever played with in Washington or the short amount of time he was in Boston. All right, so speaking of the future here, prospects.
Yeah.
We have signed a lot of ELCs lately. Um,
Did
if we
Jackson Blake get done?
Not yet that I've seen. Apparently he's. I saw Walt Ruff said something about him being with Bill Burniston, and I think that that's just him doing his physical, and also he had that injury from where he did that kind of boneheaded thing where he tried to throw that hit at the end of his last game.
I know Jackson. I heard that it was possibly getting done today, and he
Yeah,
can be with the team. I
I think
think it's
10
for
days.
yeah. So there's time.
Oh yeah, no, they're probably just making sure that he's not injured or something from what he did at the end of the game and everything like that. Because all the other guys that do ELCs, I imagine that they do physicals too before they actually sign it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, so we've got Scott Morrow, who is
Yep.
potentially a Tony D'Angelo-esque player with more size, or maybe a Brady Shea type of player down the line at some point or another. From what I observed of him in the last few years, his defensive game has improved significantly because I watched a lot of UMass games. Like he was the prospect that I watched the most, other than Nikish, and I would rank him as our second one. Bradley Nadeau is now signed. Let's see, who else am I forgetting?
I believe Unger Sorum also has a contract. We signed him actually
We signed
before
him
the
at
season started.
Prospect Camp, actually.
Yep.
Yeah, Felix
Yeah.
Unger-Soren got signed at Prospect Camp. Um, so yeah, that's Morrow, Nadeau. Damn it, I'm forgetting the third one.
Gleb something. Russian.
Trigazov.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we got so we got Gleb signed too. It seems like with him, there's a little bit of some coaching issues, but like I think that'll get straightened out once he has a consistent environment with everything, and Rod will get a hold of him and talk to him and everything like that. Out of all the guys we have right now, though, my personal belief, if we see anybody, it's going to be Morrow.
So I don't know if you listened to kind of us talk on the episode we dropped today,
Yeah, I did.
actually Monday. Um, I briefly think I touched on, I believe these signings could spell an end to some players on the roster. And I
Mm-hmm.
touched on this, right? And I'll touch on it for your audience too.
Mm-hmm.
I think everyone's going to have to get used to the idea that this team is going to look very different next year.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how many UFAs we have.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a bad thing. It's part of reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't think we're bringing everybody back. I'd be shocked if we brought everybody back. And this team has never brought everybody back.
No, if we want to stay competitive and keep the average age of the team down, we can't.
No.
It's just not
So
possible.
it's you take a look at these guys who are comparables. So it depends on where the team believes Scott Morrow is. I believe it could spell the end of Brady Shea. I hate that.
Mm-hmm.
But like we were discussing a little bit, it sounds like talked about what Elliot Friedman said. One of the things is sounds like Carolina is trying every which way to see what they can make something with Shea work.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like there's still a desire for Shea. That's a plus.
Mm-hmm.
But a comparable, if he walks, it's Brady Shea, Tony D'Angelo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are your two comparables.
Mm-hmm.
So he walks, Morrow gets slotted in. No shock there. Morrow becomes your fourth guy. Really, the replacement for Shea is going to be Orlov.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be Orlov, Chatfield, then Morrow, and maybe whoever you want to bring in.
Mm-hmm.
Joel Edmondson, I think his contract's up. That would be a good grab.
I love that guy. I've got a pair of his gloves. Like, I know he wasn't a Hurricane for very long, but I just love that steady, shutdown type of defenseman like that.
He'd be perfect, and he'd be a perfect fit with this roster, I think, as well.
You wouldn't have to pay him a whole lot or give him a lot of term either.
Not at all. So it's a perfect fit while you're waiting for some other guys to come up. For Nikishin, really, it's who that is.
That's who we're waiting on.
But then at that point, you got to look at Orlov and Burns. The defense is going to go through a retool coming up anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's any way around that.
Mm-hmm.
Then you take a look at Felix Ungersorm, who's his comparable. That's Tavo Teravainen.
Mm-hmm.
And from the sound of it, it's that Ungersorm is Tavo 2.0. Sounds like he's got a higher ceiling. So
mm-hmm.
to that point, okay, are you going to pay Tavo 5 or are you going to pay Felix Ungersorm ELC money? Well, you're going to pay Ungersorm ELC. Tavo walks. So
Mm-hmm.
right there, you just saved $10 million. How much do you think Jake Gensel's going to want?
I was going to say $10 million would go a long way towards getting Jake Gensel signed. And, it's like this front office, it likes term, but Gensel is what, 30 now?
So I told Sam this today. I said, if Jake Gensel wants 8, I give him that now. And if those last 2 years don't work out, who cares? If you win 2 Stanley Cups with a top line of Aho, Jarvis, and Gensel, who I believe if they have a full season together next year,
mm-hmm.
they're each going to get somewhere close to over a point per game.
Yeah.
I think Jarvis is going to clip probably right around 80 to 85. I think Aho is going to be 90 to 100.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Gensel is going to be 95 to 110.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's going to have that higher. I think Gensel's better than Aho. I know that's probably very unpopular, but I think Gensel has more inherent skill
mm-hmm.
than Aho does and a more nose for the net than Aho does, which is going to get him more points.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that because Aho's more of a complete player. He's,
yes,
he does a lot more. See, a lot of the offense Aho was generating before was from doing stuff right defensively, and then he would go conduct individual effort offense after the fact. Part of the reason why he has a decent amount of shorthanded goals throughout his career. Gensel is one of those guys that, like you're saying, he's more offensively minded. He has more of a nose for the net, and he makes really dangerous, or he generates a lot of high danger chances with a multitude of different things that he does. So if you can get him for 8, then yes, you absolutely do that. I always said I never thought Aho would have 100 points. If he's got Gensel and Jarvis with him, next season he might. So that's something that, like, if you could get Gensel 8 or less, do it. Absolutely, I agree with that.
Yeah, and I think that just makes a world of sense to do Jake Gensel at that. I mean, if you want to give him 8 years, 10 million, okay. Again, you can front load it so you can move the contract
mm-hmm.
at the end if you want to. I'm okay with that too.
Hmm.
I just think you can't not have a top line like that. And then you're like, oh, well, what about the bottom group? You're going to lose out a lot. Well, are you really?
Well,
If
those
you've
guys are
got
a little
Felix under
easier.
Sorum and
Yeah,
Bradley Dedeaux are ready to come in.
Jackson Blake, who I'm, looks like he's going to get signed too. It's like bottom sixes are a little bit easier to replace guys and rebuild them. Your core players, your top six forwards, and your top four defensemen, your starting goalie, or actually what the league's going to more of a 1A, 1B situation. It seems like everybody's going for that nowadays. They're looking more at goalies as a tandem as opposed to a starter and a guy who can do 20 games and win a few of them, which is what it used to be.
Yeah.
Then, it's like, yeah, I mean, I think you go ahead and ain't Gensel to a decent deal if you can get him at 8 or less. Hell, I'd even maybe go 8.5 if you have
Sure.
to. It's because he's going to command more than that on the open market if he hits it.
Well, no, I mean, look, I'm saying if Gensel wants 10 million, I give him the full 10.
You give him 10?
I'd give him 10. I give him an 8-year, $10 million contract.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. And again, you front load it, because then you give Jarvis say 8x8, 8x9,
Hmm.
and then you've got your top three locked in. That is your core. That is your identity for
Hmm.
the next 8 years.
And then you,
Because all those contracts are going to kick in to start July 1,
yeah.
right? So they all start July 1. You got all of them 8 years together.
Hmm.
How great is that?
That would be
And
awesome.
if you can get Jarvis under 10, you have Aho under 10. If you can get Gensel right around that 10, you got your top group for 30. And I think that still leaves you over 50 million for the rest of the roster.
Yeah, and that's before we know how much
That's
the cap's
amazing.
going. Yeah, that's before we know how much the cap's going to go up over the next few seasons because the way it's trending, I think it's actually going to go up a decent amount. Um, but yeah, if you get them locked up, you've already got Svechnikov. You got Jordo to still fill the whole fourth line center role for 3 more seasons if he decides he wants to play that long. Like, yeah, if you lock up, several of the forwards, you don't have to you need 13 of them, right? If you lock up 6, 7 of them long term that are going to be really like key guys, and I'm including Kokaniemi in that because I'm hoping that he'll bounce back and everything. I really do. This season was just weird. He started off so well, and then he just fell off a cliff. And I was like, okay, at least he's still doing good stuff defensively. And then he started messing up defensively. He started turning the puck over
Yeah.
and, over skating on back checks and everything. He just got in his own head. I think that he's another one of those guys that could probably benefit from going to see a sports psychologist because I think he's in his own head a little bit. So, but he can still be a core piece for this team going forward. But it's like, you got to start thinking about letting him go in the offseason if you can get a good enough deal for him. Otherwise, we're going to pay for it. He's got a no trade clause that kicks in season after next.
Yeah, and you've got again, either way, you still have KK. You've got Kuznetsov, not to forget next season. So
Mm-hmm.
you're in a position where you can do what you got to do. And I mean, you could still sign Natchez if you want to. That's not necessarily a done deal that he's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, whatever you're getting for Natchez, it's going to be decent.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I don't think there's really any situation where your top players are gone. I mean, Toronto, for example, their three best players are all over 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
If our three best players can all be right around that 10 million, like less, because
Mm-hmm.
again, Aho's making less, Jarvis will make less than Aho,
Mm-hmm.
and Gensel will make Aho money, right?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe around that 10, 10 and a half. That's better than Toronto, and we've had better success than the Toronto Maple
We
Leafs.
have.
And we're paying these guys less money. And I think Gensel's going to want to stay. I know. I think someone posted in our text chain that we've got that, Gensel's looking
Oh,
added a bunch of stuff, right? At
yeah,
Raleigh.
he had the house building companies and stuff that he was following on Instagram or whatever he was doing. Like that's a good sign. I mean, I'd imagine that anybody does that anywhere that they get traded to just out of the simple possibility that they might stay somewhere. But also at the same time, that's kind of a big deal, especially if he's looking to, be on a team that's going to be competitive for a long time. And then going back to the defense for a second, even if Pesci and Shea both walk, if you sign Chatfield, then your top four is still intact next season between Slave and Burns, Orlov and Chatfield, and then you can put Morrow on the third pair, and then, like you said, bring a guy like Joel Edmondson back, and then the defense is still lethal. It's still set. There's times where the Orlov and Chatfield pair has been our best one once they found their footing together.
Yeah, and even if you wanted to ignore like Edmondson, if you just wanted to give Tony another contract, so you're going to play this year,
Yeah,
That's
I
fine
I
too.
hate the situation he ended up in. I know certain other forms of Hurricanes media and podcasters were absolutely salivating at what happened to him this season, but then they'll turn around and say all this stuff about, oh, we care about the mental health of the players. What do you think he's going through right now? He ain't happy about this. The guy just wants to play.
And he has not said a single bad thing about the coaching staff
No.
or the front office.
Like that was
And according to them, according to all of these people, that's what he should be doing. He should be out there punching like Freddie Anderson in the face or something like that, right? Or going out there saying all kinds of crap on social media. Look, I follow the guy on, I think it's Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Dude doesn't post anything negative ever.
Mm-hmm.
He is very positive. He's out there, and when he plays, he's good.
I
He's
believe that too.
very good.
And then like another thing with him is like, and I know that we've talked about this before. He is the one guy okay, Burns was drafted as a forward. He could probably have done it before, but I wouldn't try it now at his age. Shea, I think, could do it. But if there was anybody I was going to pick out of all of our defensemen right now and say, you play forward, it's Tony. He's the only one I think that could pick it up really quick because that's essentially what he is. He's a pure offensive defenseman. He's a fourth forward. And when people want to criticize him for stuff, one, the games that he'd been in the lineup where he was playing with Shea particularly, he was doing pretty good. Like defensively and everything like that. Those were all close games. He never got walked a single time in those. I was at 2 of those. And not to mention, it's like he keeps the play at the other end of the ice. Like, yeah, he's aggressive when he pinches, but he usually gets it right. There's one time he makes a little mistake at some point or another in a game, and everyone's like, him, he did it again. Look, traffic cone, sucks, bad, get him out of here, KHL.
I mean, this is also a thing to think about. Carolina wins the Stanley Cup. What does Jordan Staal and Brent Burns do?
I
Do
think
they
that
play their contracts or do they retire?
I think there's a
Because
possibility they both retire. If Brent Burns retires, you have to sign Tony, like immediately.
because he works, because you don't. That is a no-brainer. He like, all right, he plays with Slavin. He's great with Slavin.
Yeah,
So there are a lot of intangibles that we don't know. Again, you operate now under the fact that okay, Burns is going to play
mm-hmm.
next season because he's under contract next season.
Mm-hmm.
But if you win the cup, what do they do?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just Stall like, oh well, or just Stall even say, you know what, I'm going to play at least one more season. However, I want to give the captaincy to Aho.
Yeah, because that would take a lot of burden off of him, and I think Aho's ready. I think he's ready.
And that's different than Rod stripping Stall. It's Stall saying,
Mm-hmm.
"Hey, I wanna do this.
Yeah,
Like it's time."
yeah. And I think that time is coming because his extension starts next year. I have no reason to believe that Aho will ever be anything other than a Hurricane. The way that this team is structured and the way that they don't mortgage the future, and the one upside of that is I don't see any reason why they won't make the playoffs pretty much every year for the next decade. It's annoying at times, but then they have trade deadlines like they had this season where they went in and got stuff done. We have 60 seconds left, so I will give you the rest of it, and you can lead us out.
Well, I mean, I think this team is good. I think this team is ready to go for the playoffs. I really could care less about the results of all of these games coming up other than Boston. Stay healthy, be ready to go. Pittsburgh, I mean, New York needs to win 2 games, and they've clinched the conference. So, I mean, I think after Boston, maybe just start resting people. So I do.
Agree.
I give these young guys a chance. Let them see what it's like to work in a winning culture. And I'm ready for the playoffs.
All righty, me too. All right, guys, thank you very much for joining us tonight. Again, this is Sam Driscoll. Him and Sam Wallace host the Caniac Report. You can find it on all the podcasting platforms. I will leave a link to their link tree in the description. Thank you very much for being on, dude. I can't wait to have you on here again.
Thanks for having me, as always.
All right, buddy. I'll see you next time.
See ya.